Hello, everybody, and welcome to what I think is going to be episode 4 of the LeanTossup college football podcast season previews. My name is Robert Martin. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, BuckMetrics. How are you doing today?
I'm confused. I thought you were a numbers guy, and you can't count from 1, 2, 3 to 4. I'm kidding. I understand.
Yeah. Well, we're recording this one at the same day we're recording the first ones, so I'm not sure. We're going to try to get smaller podcasts. I'm not sure if we're going to. I think we're going to cut up into 3, but we'll have to see. I'm not sure. So I think this is going to be number 4. But if not, it's number 3. At which point, then you're very confused. But that's okay. We are here. We're talking college football now. So I think the big thing we want to talk about here is obviously before we get in depth into individual conference previews, kind of still 1,000-foot view here. We're going to talk about new offensive coordinator quarterback combos, which is, again, this is probably one of the most important aspects of the game. Who your quarterback is obviously the most important aspect of one of the most important aspects of college football, and also the offensive coordinator, right? A good offensive coordinator can make all the difference here. So go ahead. Which ones are you kind of highlighting here?
So I've broken this up, and hold on to your hats. I've broken this up into 14 groups, although not all of them will be deep dives. But this isn't every single new combination. These are the ones that really stuck out to me in one way or another. And you'll kind of get a feel for how I'm ordering them before too long. So the first grouping, is just a single combination. I call this one obvious with an exclamation point. And that is Clemson, Clay Kubnick, now playing for Garrett Riley, who came from TCU. To me, this is obviously like the best new combination of, that we're seeing from versus last season. Klubnik was, by some standards, the highest rated recruit ever in high school football history. Garrett Riley, coming off a run that took him to the championship game as the offensive coordinator at TCU. Dabo Sweeney, surprisingly not screwing around, and actually went outside the family to get a new OC. So I think I can't see a situation in which this one doesn't work, other than sneakily Clemson's wide receivers have not been that explosive or awesome the last few years.
Yeah, the thing is, the big problem for Clemson last year and kind of the last couple of years has been the offense. Ever since they've lost Trevor Lawrence, this team has struggled offensively, and that's been the big issue, right? They've been amazing on defense. I remember back in 2021, they won games through defense, right? Like, it was literally like, all right, you're going to put up 10 points. All right, guess we got to hold them to a field goal. Like, that was the level of defense they were. And they did it. They pulled it off. And again, a lot of the problems was with DJ Ulick-Calahai, and now you've got Cade Klubnik, and I think he actually showed a little bit there at the end. They basically pulled DJ, put this kid in. He did win the game, although I don't think he didn't do well in that specific game. But then, and it was funny because I remember at that moment, it's like, oh no, DJ, like literally as he was leaving the field, Dabo was like, no, DJ's our guy. I'm like, no, he's not your guy. And then it was like literally like I think like the next game they're like, yeah, okay, because he started the ACC championship game and he won, I believe. So like they needed to make a change. Their offense had been struggling for a couple of years. I think and again, Garrett Riley from TCU. TCU, amazing season, almost completely unbelievable season last year. I think this is an amazing hire, and we're not talking about TCU yet. We'll talk about them later, obviously. But yeah, no, I think this is a pretty good pairing. I mean, Max Duggan looked amazing last year in that offense. Yeah, okay, they did have Quentin Johnson go in the first round. Max Duggan, I think, made it to the 3rd or 4th round of the NFL draft. Nothing particularly special there, but yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting pairing, and I'm looking forward to that. I think they could potentially be one of the better teams in the ACC, or potentially the best team in the ACC, to be honest.
Yeah, in the country, really. I mean, this is a game changer. All right, next category. Obvious with a question mark. I think these two absolutely make sense. I just don't know if they're obvious because some of these might not be household names to people. Wisconsin, we were all over Tanner Mordecai at SMU last year. He's transferred to Wisconsin, and he is paired with Phil Longo, who was the offensive coordinator at North Carolina last year.
Yeah, it's I really like I we're gonna obviously talk about Wisconsin more, but I actually really do like Wisconsin this year. This is a team that I've heavily criticized over the last couple of years for a very specific player who unfortunately is now on my team. So that makes me very sad. But um no, like it's very clear that they were being held back by Graham Mertz. And now Tanner Mordecai was, I mean, SMU didn't have the greatest season, but that was definitely not Tanner Mordecai's fault. He's like, all right, I'm putting up 45. And then, like, the defense is like, sorry, we're going to let them score 48 this week. It's like, damn, why would you, come on. Like that was literally SMU's season last year. It's like, okay, we're
Yeah.
going to score 45 points this week. It's like, well, unfortunately, they're going to score 48. Be like, oh, well, came close. And again, you put him behind an amazing offensive line at Wisconsin. You get him a couple of good weapons. You have an amazing running back too, and you pair him with an amazing offensive coordinator last year. Like, yeah, this is going to be a really solid team. You bring in Luke Fickell as the head coach. I have high expectations for this Wisconsin team. And again, when we're looking at an offseason where Ohio State lost their star quarterback, Michigan is basically the same, and the Big Ten West is still whatever. I think they could I think they could very easily be the best team in the Big Ten West. I have high expectations for them. I think they definitely could do that. Could be that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I'll say that for now until we get to the Big Ten preview. The other one in the obvious question mark category, TCU. You know, they lost Garrett Riley. They pick up Kendall Briles from Arkansas, and who actually did some really good work at FAU under Lane Kiffin for a while. And the quarterback is Chandler Morris, which is noteworthy because, interestingly, maybe just to you and I, he is the son of, is it Guy Morris? I got the first name wrong, but basically the guy that coached at SMU, got hired by Arkansas, and then got fired like in his second season because he lost to San Jose State and UNLV in the same season. Yikes. Anyways, that's his dad. Chandler Morris actually beat out Max Dugan for the starting job at TCU at the beginning of last year. So it's not like this guy's chopped liver. He's very talented. His dad was a great offensive coordinator at Clemson. And pair him with Kendall Briles. I think this absolutely works.
I agree with that. I think my concern for this TCU team isn't going to be Chandler Morris. I think I'm much more concerned about their losses. They lost a first round wide receiver. A lot of schools not named Ohio State and Alabama don't have a lot of first round wide receivers, and that's the thing. And it's like when you get one, you're like, oh man, we're gonna really miss that guy. Ohio State's got we got like 5 of them just sitting in the back here.
Yep.
No, I mean they also lost their running back. Their offensive line is mostly intact at TCU, so I think they'll be okay, but I worry much more about that team. I think they are the textbook definition of this team will regress this year. Mm-hmm. And that's not because they lost the championship game in a 50-something nothing. That I think that was kind of random. I think that game definitely should have been closer. I think that wasn't the level TCU had played all year. I think random stuff happens sometimes, and sometimes you just come out flat, and that's what happened there. But honestly, I worry about this TCU team a lot this year. And maybe Chandler Morris could be really good. Maybe TCU can keep up that pace. But and to be fair, I don't think there's a ton of amazing teams in the Big 12 this year. We'll talk more about the Big 12 later. But I do worry about. I think this team is going to drop a couple of games, and that's going to really hurt them. But we'll see. I could be wrong about that. Yeah.
I think it can be almost as good as Duggan, and they still lose like 3 or 4 games. It's just they have
I think that's a very fair.
Year.
That's a very fair point.
All right, Group 3. Should this be obvious? This is I'll just say it, and then I can kind of just let it sit there, and you can feel my little bit of unease. That is Oregon State, DJU, playing for Jonathan Smith. A lot of faith being placed in this one.
Yeah.
I'll let you speak to it first.
I don't love it. There is, and we're going to be going through a lot of these. There are a lot that are like extremely questionable. And now, to be fair, though, if you're Oregon State and you're whoever mans the transfer portal at Oregon State, you're like, oh, we could get Clemson's quarterback from last year. That sounds great on paper. But it may not actually be that great, though, because their problem was their quarterback. So you're like, we got Clemson's quarterback. Like, well, that sounds great. but maybe that's not that great though. And this is the thing. There's a lot of them. There's some of them are like, what are you doing? This is a clear downgrade. But some of them are like, well, maybe you can make the argument that he was good at Clemson. If you just fix him a little bit, then he could be good. And because, like, again, there's still people that are like, oh, no, that game against Notre Dame, guys. Remember, he played Notre Dame that one time, and he was really good against that Notre Dame team. And, like, that's the problem, is that people are still like, no, he was really good in that game. We can get him back there. It's like he's just not that player anymore. So there is, like, I have concerns about Oregon State in that. But Oregon State is a random team. They'll just randomly beat other teams sometimes. Like, they beat a far superior Oregon team last year.
Yes.
Yeah, and like, that's the thing.
Well, now you're getting to where I'm kind of stuck. They beat Oregon with 29 consecutive rushes to end the game because they have no quarterback. And this is kind of a chicken and egg thing. Do they just need a quarterback? Or are they unable to develop a quarterback? I actually heard a pretty good case from somebody saying, yeah, this is a horrible move for DJ because Oregon State has the worst QB coach in the Pac-12 by far. And I can't disagree. I don't know. That's why there's obvious upside. There's obvious severe downside, which means at the whole, I guess it's obvious. It's just we're not obvious which direction it's going to be. The obvious is the volatility that's possible here.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Maybe it's not the best fit. I don't think it's like quarterback at Army level, but it's not great.
Well said. All right, next grouping. I call this one "You've Been Warned." I think these ones are pretty much sure things to happen that are well below everybody's radar, and that is what we specialize here on this podcast. All right. First, I'll say these four at once, so you can just react after I say them all. NC State, Brennan Armstrong hooked up with Robert Anae. Remember, these guys actually were the QB and OC at Virginia 2 years ago when Armstrong had amazing numbers. And then Tony Elliott came in and just ruined the Virginia offense. Robert Anae went to Syracuse and actually turned Garrett Schrader into a pretty good quarterback for about half a season. Now these guys are reunited at NC State. I like that. Cincinnati, Emory Jones, who I think was sneaky good, maybe sneaky competent plus at Florida. Took a little side trip to Tucson or to Tempe. Not a bad idea. I love Tempe. And he is at Cincinnati. And you remember what Satterfield, their head coach, did with Malik Cunningham. And their OC is actually Brad Glenn, who comes from Georgia State, which is a really good hire. Georgia State has had sneaky good quarterback play for like a few years now. This one's going to work. Number 3, Fresno State. Mikey Keene, who was at UCF, he didn't really fit Gus's system, but he had really good numbers there. I guess Gus just prefers somebody that doesn't like to throw the ball in a straight line. He's playing for Jeff Tedford, the head coach, who is clearly proven as a developer of quarterbacks. And I have the last one here. I actually moved up from a different category. Louisiana Tech. Hank Bachmeier, transfer from Boise State, is actually coming in and playing for Sonny Cumbie, who actually did a really good job at TCU in 2021 and actually we'll get into this at Conference USA. He did a sneaky, really good job in 2022 with the quarterback play. I think all 4 of these work. And even say that to you?
Brennan Armstrong, I think, is probably the more iffy one. And
really?
It's... the thing of it is, like, you're going from Dennis Leary to Brennan Armstrong. Like, that's the thing, right? It's just, like, it's such a clear downgrade from the year before, right? Now, he is being renamed an old OC. You don't think it is?
I look at 2 years ago, Brennan Armstrong. He was way better than Devin Leary was at any point. And he's back with the guy that made him great. His old OC.
That's true. Yeah, Virginia was really... It was weird. Virginia was, like, really good, and then last year they were, like, really bad. But the question is, why were they really bad? And I don't... Brandon Armstrong it was Virginia, right? Not Virginia Tech. Right?
Yeah. He was in Virginia.
Yeah, Virginia. Yeah. No, and I don't know. Like, the question is, like, you worry that this guy just has, like, a breakout year, and then they have enough tape on him, and they figure him out, and then that's it, right? That's, I think, the more iffy one. Emory Jones it's just, like, this is what, now his third team? Like, how does he...
Nope.
Why do they just keep letting him change schools? Like, I thought there were rules. I don't know what the rules are, but I thought there were at least some rules. He's not bad. He was actually like they didn't, or Arizona State didn't make a bowl last year, but they were like sneakily okay. Like they covered.
Yeah.
I think I had a couple of Arizona State spreads near the end of the season. And I think they upset someone too, if I remember correctly.
Let's not forget. I was going to say they beat Washington. One of two
Yeah,
teams to beat Washington.
That's right. Yeah, I think it was like a 14.5 point spread. I think I had that in the
We
money
both
line
had
too.
that.
I think
I had that money line. Yeah, that was week 5, the famous week 5, and we were both looking at our models saying, "Huh, our models are broken," but they agree, so they're not broken.
That's right. I remember that now. Yeah, because we were both like, "That's weird." I'm like, this is wrong." You're like, I have that too." I'm like, "That's weird." And we're like, "I guess maybe we'll throw something on that," and then it was right.
Yep.
It's just it's a weird. I don't know. Emory Jones is okay. And again for Cincinnati, I think it was last year. Now again, that was Luke Finkel, of course, but he basically had Cincinnati had Ben Bryant like throwing like I think it's like 3 touchdowns in some games. Like it was crazy. And I think if you pair him with a good offensive coordinator, I think like Cincinnati is not horrible. Now they are getting a step up in competition to the Big Ten, the Big 12.
That's a problem.
So that is a problem, and I worry that, and we'll talk more about the Big 12 later. I think the Big 12 is just like there's a couple of good teams and then just a bunch of mush. And I think that Cincinnati is going to fit right into that mush. But the thing is, to be fair, there's value in that, right? Like you get a couple of bad losses, suddenly you're seeing like Cincinnati plus 6.5 plus 200 money line. You're like, I like that, right? Like when you're like, oh, these teams are equal, and I'm getting 6.5. Like there's value to be had there. I'm definitely going to be betting on Cincinnati some games, but I think it's going to be less. It's going to be less than people think, and I think there will be some value plays, but I don't think this is going to be a team. I don't think this is going to be, at least at this point. I don't think it's a team that's competing for the Big 12 title.
Yeah, agree. But yeah, not to ruin the Big 12 preview pod, but I think I agree with you on that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, the next group I call sneaky redemption possibilities. These are kind of random names that have landed here and there that I think are in sneakily good positions to move up or reclaim what they had. Purdue. Hudson Card from Texas, who actually was pretty good last season.
Yeah.
He was pretty good both seasons. He has a new offensive coordinator at Purdue, and his name is Graham Harrell, who stunk at West Virginia, but actually did pretty well, especially on the passing side at USC. And before that was very, very good at North Texas. South Florida, Gary Bohannon. You might remember he actually was the quarterback of the Baylor team that won the Big 12 title. He was displaced by Blake Shapen. That doesn't look like the best move now. And his head coach is Alex Golish, who was the offensive coordinator for Tennessee and was the offensive coordinator at UCF under Josh Heupel. And thirdly, this is a little more of a stretch, but I kind of like this. Drew Pine, he looked bad on the field, but his numbers were actually pretty good. He had I'll just call it, my generic quarterback rating of 110. So he was, decently above average. And I think he lands in a good spot at Arizona State. Kellen Dillingham, did a great job with Bo Nix last season. And his offensive coordinator is Bo Baldwin did a really good job when he was the head coach at Eastern Washington. They had a dynamic offense. He didn't work out at Cal, and I think that was more of a Justin Wilcox thing than a Bo Baldwin thing. So I think this is a good spot for him, and he's playing for a more offensive-minded coach. This could be a good spot for Drew Pine. Now, this is where Jaden Rashada ended up. So if Kenny Dillingham, if they lose the first 3, they might just be smart and say, okay, put the kid in and just let him get his growing pains now. But, Drew Pine could be like that sneaky, if they, a very, very deep fantasy football. He would be like your 5th quarterback to put on your roster or something.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of another one where it's like I think Pine is still a downgrade over Emory Jones from last year. You asked me who I'm taking Emory Jones over Drew Pine. He could. I mean, there is probably some amount of like he's poised for a breakout because he played a little bit in 21. I think some of 22 because they benched Bachmeier for a while, right?
Oh, who Pine you're talking about?
Yeah, Pine started some of the games last year, right?
He was at Notre Dame, and he actually went in when the kid that's at Alabama, Buckner, got hurt. So he played
Buckner,
like
yeah.
9 games last season. Yeah.
Yeah. So he did play some of those games, but it wasn't particularly impressive. Notre Dame had
You know
some
what?
struggles last year.
Run it through some of your models, because I remember thinking this guy was terrible, and then I ran him through my my
Mm-hmm.
QB metric. It's like, wow, this guy is like definitely above average,
Okay,
which
I'll have to take
shocked
a
me.
look at that because
Now,
mm-hmm.
and he had nobody to throw to other than that tight end Meyer. That was really it too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's interesting. Yeah, take a look at that. You might be like I don't know. Not that I'm praying at the church of Drew Pine,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm a little bit of a believer here.
Yeah, I can get behind that. Yeah.
Okay, next group. This is just one. Slow and steady wins the race. Luke Altmaier, who was actually a pretty big recruit at Mississippi, ends up at Illinois, and he's playing for Barry Lunney, who's done a really good job at Illinois. I just think this is way below the radar. Illinois they prove they don't need a great quarterback, and they seem to really, really prove that the last 2 years. This is like a nice kind of, after a consolidation of gains, a next step up at the quarterback position. Lunney was really, really good at UTSA. This one makes a lot of sense, and I'm kind of worried that this is one of those things I might get too over my skis about and too excited about, but I really like this move.
Yeah, Illinois it was a defensive-heavy team. They got rid of, or I'm not sure if got rid of, his Tommy DeVito moved on.
Yes.
And the thing was, they were never a quarterback power team. They were a defensive-first, defensive-powered team. They now the thing is, to be fair, they did lose their top cornerback to the NFL. He was the 4th overall pick, I want to say. Yeah, he was the 4th overall pick. So they did lose that, but the defense is still pretty stacked. Again, you just get a half-decent quarterback who could do some things. It doesn't throw the ball to the other team like Tommy DeVito did sometimes. You can win games. And again, are they they're probably one of the best teams in the Big Ten West, and then with the exception of a couple other teams, like they'll be competitive in the Big Ten East as well, with the exception of kind of the big ones. But yeah, no, I think they could be one of the better teams in the Big Ten West.
Yeah. All right. Next one. Again, this is just a single pairing. I call this one quick fix. Louisville. They get Jack Plummer from Cal, but before that, he was at Purdue to return to play for his old coach, Jeff Brom. Makes sense. We talked, especially more in the preseason last year, about, a lot of coaching careers go sideways because right out of the gate, you have a bad quarterback situation. Jack Plummer's, sorry, Plummer family, I don't think is going to win the Heisman, but this is a great first-year quarterback for Brom to pick up, as it's somebody that was proven at Purdue and knows his system well. I like it. Again, he's not going to win the Heisman or anything like that, but this really improves the chances of a really nice year one for Brom in Louisville.
Yeah, I agree. I think they need to kind of rebuild. Last year was not a particularly great year for them with Malik Cunningham. I think that they need to rebuild. And I think this is a good opportunity to begin to do that, to begin that process. And yeah, I think because they lost their head coach to Purdue, right? Louisville?
Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
Lost is a generous characterization. Yeah, I think he was kind of asked to go interview for the job.
Yeah, so they need to do a little bit of rebuilding, and I think this could be a good start for them. And I think we'll see them. It's not going to be this year, but we'll see them again be one of the top teams in the ACC.
Yep. Okay. The next group I call great. What else do we have? 2 pairings here. I'm getting a little emotional about this first one. Casey Thompson is at Florida Atlantic. Casey Thompson is a really good quarterback, guys. Casey Thompson was really good at Texas. Casey Thompson was really good at Nebraska. We'll get to the other side of that shortly, but this is a crime that he's at FAU. He's playing for Tom Herman, which I'm really mixed about. Herman, I think he did a. I don't know if he did a crappy job with Ellinger at Texas, or if he just got the most out of a limited but gutsy guy. I don't know. I thought Herman was overrated at Houston, and he got by on a great defense and a shaky offense. Maybe his stint as an NFL assistant has taught him to grow up and actually study harder. But it's a crime that Casey Thompson is a G5 quarterback. He alone could carry this team. The other one is New Mexico, which is shocking to be mentioned in a positive context here. But they get Dylan Hopkins from UAB, who was really, really good for many years there. And the offensive coordinator is Brian Vincent, who was overmatched as the interim coach last year, but was the offensive coordinator before that, who did all the great work with Dylan Hopkins. Really don't know if they have anything else there at New Mexico, but maybe two kind of islands of competence in otherwise seas of dearths of talent.
Mm-hmm. No, that first one, FAU, in no way a power school at all. But now you've got Casey Thompson, who was, again, if you remember back, that was the guy who that was Caleb Williams' debut. That was when Casey Thompson and Texas were lighting up.
Oh, that's right.
Oklahoma. Yeah. They were like destroying them, and then Caleb Williams came in, and then because that was Spencer Rattler, it was Casey Thompson versus Spencer Rattler, and then Caleb Williams came in, and then they won that game, that game was insane. And also, weirdly, that game was in 720p. I don't know why it wasn't in full HD. It was weird. It wasn't like in full HD. I don't know why. But anyways, that's beside the point. But no,
it's because you use those pirate services, buddy. But not to get you in trouble, but
no. I actually no. I think I watched that game on because that game they do actually have some games on. No, but if you go look at that game online, it's only in 720p on YouTube. Some of the old games. It's weird. It's weird. Anyways, but no. That's a really good pairing. Tom Herman, yeah, that's very questionable. We all have mixed feelings with Tom Herman. But yeah, Casey Thompson for Florida Atlantic, I mean, again, they're not particularly playing the top schools here. And again, this is also another crazy stat here. We've now talked about Casey Thompson and Hudson Card that were good quarterbacks for Texas that are now just in other schools. What is and the thing is, these are Texas has not found much success in the last couple of years, and they've had these good quarterbacks. Why? What is this problem with Texas? And there was an article, I think it was earlier in the offseason. It's Texas, I think, because when Bijan got drafted, he was the first Texas player to go in the first round in 10 years or something. It was some ridiculous stat. And when you look at it percentage-wise, the percentage of 5 stars at Texas that have gone on to the NFL is lower than at any other school. And it's it's this crazy stat where they're just not developing these guys right. And apparently now some of them are just leaving. So, but yeah, no, Casey Thompson, I love that fit at FAU. That's a huge upgrade. Great, good for them. Yeah, Dylan Hopkins, how do you, UAB was a surprise, a sneakily good team last year. And they're let's just give our quarterback to New Mexico, which I think they're an independent. New Mexico's an independent team. That one makes no sense to me. But
they're in the Mountain West. They're independent of any kind of winning. That's probably what you're thinking of.
That's the thing. How do you there are a lot of quarterbacks that I have a lot more question marks about, that if I would much rather have Dylan Hopkins than, and we're getting to that list soon.
Yeah. Yep.
I would I'd put Casey Thompson or Dylan Hopkins in for any of those guys in a heartbeat. And that's very questionable how they let that guy slip to New Mexico, and very questionable why his agents, I'm assuming, were no, we got this ready to dig for you, New Mexico. What? There's so many better teams that they could have gone to, but
yeah, I don't know. All right, next group is a single one. If you've seen the movie Rounders, I'll kind of go in character. It's I feel so unsatisfied. Drake May, the great Drake May, awesome in his first year as a starting quarterback at North Carolina. He loses Phil Longo and he picks up Chip Lindsey as offensive coordinator. I want you to find me the fan of any team where Chip Lindsey has been the offensive coordinator, or a fan of Troy where he was a head coach, and say, God, I'm so glad Chip Lindsey is my head coach or offensive coordinator. You won't find him. This doesn't make sense. Maybe Chip is really good friends with Mac Brown. I don't know.
Yeah, this is a concerning one for me. quick look at the Heisman board, and I've made one Heisman bet. We'll talk about that at a different day, so I'm not going to give away what that is. But looking down the Heisman board, obviously the favorite is Caleb Williams to repeat. Generally, they don't repeat. Second up favorite is Drake May. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, is this good value, right? Because if
Oh
Caleb
boy.
Williams doesn't repeat, like, because here's the thing, right? The theory, and I'll explain why this is a horrible idea. But I thought for 1 second, I'm like, if Caleb Williams doesn't repeat, Drake May's getting a lot of hype. Maybe Drake May. But you know what? I realized like they're gonna drop like at least 2 games. There is no way this like Mac Brown is not gonna drop 2-3 games. It's gonna be a disappointing season, and I mean Drake may not even go first overall. He may fall like third, like probably not even second. Like we know this is gonna be a disappointing season, and we'll have to see. Now that being said, though, the interesting thing is the fact that Sam Howell is going to probably be the starting quarterback for the Washington Commanders this year. Which is interesting because he was originally projected to be a first round pick for the 2021 draft, but then because he had a disappointing 2021 season, then he basically fell far, like the 5th round. So I think if he plays well, then it's going to be like, okay, maybe North Carolina actually has good quarterbacks, it's just the coaching staff around them, which with Mac Brown, that kind of makes sense. And Chip Lindsey. But here's the thing, though, like we'll see. I'm in. There's been a lot of hype about Drake May. He did pretty good. He did some really good things, but I'm not ready to pull the trigger on a Heisman for that. That seems way too risky. And the thing is, we know they're going to lose a couple of close games, and it's going to cost them. So no, I'm not doing that.
Yep. Okay. And speaking of, I have questions. I have questions is my next group.
Here we
for
go.
different reasons here, but there's just big questions. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Nebraska. This is just perfect. Nebraska picks up Jeff Sims from Georgia Tech, which is just unbelievable. That's who displaced Casey Thompson. Well done. Offensive coordinator is Marcus Satterfield, who they stole from South Carolina, who I think until the last 2 games of last season, every South Carolina fan wanted fired like repeatedly. Number 2, totally different set of circumstances. Oregon, Bo Nix. He goes from Dillingham, who Arizona State hired, to Will Stein. Now, this is interesting to me because Will Stein was the offensive coordinator for UTSA only for 1 year, and he followed Barry Lunney, who we talked about in the Illinois discussion, who really laid the foundation there. I don't know what Will Stein is. I'm just fascinated to see. So I've got questions about who's coaching Bo Nix and what does Bo Nix do with a different coach that's not killing Kenny Dillingham. Boise State, Talon Green, who really saved their season last year. Remember that they had Dirk Cutter come in and fix their offense. So now he's been replaced by Bush Hamdan, who was the offensive coordinator for a couple years under Chris Peterson. It's kind of a blank slate, if you will. I asked a couple of Washington buddies, and they really had no opinion, positive or negative, on Hamdan. Coastal Carolina, Grayson McCall, who's been great. He moves from having Jamie Chadwell as his head coach to Tim Beck. I don't want to spoil the Sunbelt pod, but that's an interesting change. I'll just say that. 5th, UTSA, Frank Harris, who's been awesome there. He loses Will Stein, and now these 2 coordinators are moved from Barry Lunney. This is what concerns me, because Harris is an obvious talent, but now the offensive coordinator is a person named Justin Burke, who was the special teams coordinator last year. Uh-oh. I'm not fond of that move. And then lastly, Notre Dame, Sam Hartman, obvious talent at Wake Forest. You know, the talent is absolutely there. I'm really concerned about going from the mesh offense to playing for Notre Dame, which is more power. And then their offensive coordinator is a gentleman named Gerard Parker, who was their tight ends coach last year, who they elevated when Tommy Rees got hired away to Alabama. So all kinds of different questions there. What strikes you as, the most questionable of these?
I've got to say Jeff Sims to Nebraska. Like, that one is really, like, that's the best you could do. Like, I mean, the thing is, you go out and you're like, okay, we need to make a big splash hire. So you go out and you hire Matt Rule, former head coach of the Panthers, who got fired because he wasn't really good in the NFL. And then, but he was really good at Baylor and a couple other schools. So it's like, okay, great. This is a great head coaching hire. We're in good shape. We're going to get Matt Rule. Okay. because he was really good at recruiting all this stuff. Okay, great. So you go and you get, because again, with the transfer portal, you can get whatever quarterback you want. And we just listed a ton of amazing quarterbacks. Also, Casey Thompson would have been perfectly fine. Just keep him. Don't get rid of him. And yet they're like, no, we're going to get the quarterback from Georgia Tech, one of the worst offenses in the country last year. And that's extremely concerning to me. I don't know. Again, I was kind of skeptical of Nebraska with Matt Rule before. This is more skeptical. It's going to take a couple of years. Obviously, Matt Rule isn't going to get fired after 1 year at Nebraska, but this is very concerning. Now, Jeff Sims had 1 or 2 good games in him last year too, I think, but like that's a little concerning. Bo Nix, I kind of feel like at a certain point, because the thing is they kind of fixed Bo Nix. I think he's kind of fixed. I don't think you can unfix him. I think he kind of learned a lot last year. I don't think he's going to unlearn a lot of it, but we'll have to see. I kind of like some of the more veteran ones like Grayson McCall, Frank Harris, I think is fine. Sam Hartman, I don't know. The Notre Dame situation is kind of a mess on the offensive side. Also, a spillover of this is also the Alabama offense, too, and their quarterback situation as well. But I think we're going to talk about them later.
Yeah.
But
I think, go ahead.
Yeah, but I kind of think Sam Hartman should be okay. I mean, how many years is he? He's almost an offensive coordinator himself. So I think him and Frank Harris are almost offensive coordinators. So I think they're okay. Boise State, I'm kind of, like their quarterback last year was actually pretty good, Hank Bachmeier. So that's a good pickup for Louisiana Tech. That's kind of a downward move for him, honestly. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks who are like good, and then they seem to have gone to worse schools, and there's quarterbacks who are bad that seem to have gone to better schools. I don't know. Maybe they picked better NIL agents. I don't know, but somehow something weird happened with some of these guys. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think you kind of stumbled into a good nickname that will be a storyline to follow, which is Bo fixed?
Yeah,
I like that.
Or is Bo Nix fixed?
That's Bo fixed. Is Bo fixed? Yeah. Okay. The next group I call who really broke this offense. You've got new quarterbacks, and we can kind of see, okay, is the problem basically they had a bum there before, or is it basically they have a bum that's actually running, calling the plays? Oklahoma State. Alan Bowman has done this weird trip from Texas Tech to Michigan, and now to Oklahoma State. The OC there is Casey Dunn, who was a wide receivers coach forever, and as soon as he took over the offense, it stunk. In fairness, he had Spencer Sanders as his quarterback, so it might be a Sanders quarterback issue. I don't know. So we can probably figure out who broke the offense at Oklahoma State, Casey Dunn or Spencer Sanders. Similarly, at Rice, go ahead.
Actually, no, I just want to point out one thing, because the thing was, obviously, Oklahoma State was one of our big calls last year because they started the season 6-0, and we're like, this is one of the most fraudulent 6-0 teams ever in the history, and I think they lost the next 6 games, and in some cases in brutal fashions, like not even like it was like, it was a 20-point loss, like stuff like that. And the thing is, it was so funny because in one of the previews, they're like, oh man, like Oklahoma State's offense was doing great. Spencer Sanders threw for like 5 touchdowns in the first game. Like, that was against Central Michigan. Like, he wasn't playing Alabama. He was playing Central Michigan here. Like, he should have thrown for 5 touchdown passes, and they should have won by more than a score. Like, that was what that game was. Like, there was a lot of problems at Oklahoma State. It wasn't just the offense. It was the defense last year, too. But, okay, we'll continue on with this.
Yep. Okay. Second one, Rice. JT Daniels, his 4th school. You think Emory Jones gets around. This guy puts Emory Jones to shame. For Marcus Tuiasosopo, who's been the OC for a few years, Rice has had just horrible quarterback play. We can see basically, okay, is there proof of concept with an actual quarterback, or is this just a hopeless situation? And then third, Pitt. Phil Jurkovec moves from BC to Pitt. They take a huge step back. It's just, not to make this a different segment, a different podcast. You might remember that a certain gentleman named Narduzzi was bad-mouthing a certain OC named Whipple, saying how much he stunk and run him off. And then the Pitt offense took a huge step back last year. Now, in fairness, they lost Jordan Addison as well as Kenny Pickett. But Cignetti was pretty much, a whatever OC as I had come to, expect. we can see, okay, maybe the problem was Keaton Slovis, maybe it was Signetti. Now with Dracovic coming in, maybe we get a little more wiser about what was the problem, the OC or was it Slovis?
Yeah, I think JT Daniels is fascinating because he keeps making like moves lower and lower. Started out Georgia, West Virginia, Rice, some Division two team next year, I think.
No,
And
I
it's
think
just
he's going back to modern day high school next year. Actually,
yeah, I was about to
he
say
came out
that.
early. He might be
Yeah,
able to do that. He only played 3 years there.
yeah, he can go back to high school. Like I don't know if they can even do that, but no, it just seems crazy how like again the goal for a lot of these guys is you're supposed to go to the NFL, and if you keep going to worse schools, you're not getting there. Um, Pitt is again. This screams to me a lateral move. Slovis was okay. Wasn't great. Was it bad? I just thought he was okay. I thought maybe you give it an extra year to develop. Maybe that'd be okay, but apparently no. We're just gonna turf him and get the worst quarterback from Boston College. Okay, I guess
Yeah,
that's a choice. Would have been the choice I would have made, but that's certainly a choice. And yeah,
you
I'm
don't make that
yeah
easy
all
money though.
yeah. I mean this is again this is like okay I was bad at a bad school and now I'm gonna be at a better school. Like Pitt played in the which bowl was it? Was it the Cotton Bowl? I
The
can't remember
Sun
which
Bowl
bowl it
against
was.
UCLA.
No. Okay, but the year before when they played in
Oh,
the against Michigan State in one of the Big Six bowls when all the star
yeah,
players
yeah.
didn't play in that game. What game was that? Was it the Cotton
Yeah, was
Bowl
it?
or I don't? It was one of the. It doesn't matter because we have no idea which teams it was because it was all scrambled. But anyways, yeah, it's very concerning that like I don't know how these people like failed upwards. Like him and Jeff Sims, they seem to have just failed upwards, which is rare
There you go.
in sports with statistics.
This is also his third school too. He was at Notre Dame before Pitt, so another Emory
That's true.
Jones
Yeah.
guy. Okay, 12th group, a single one. This is just called "Wasn't he good for like a month?" Garrett Schrader, who we talked about at Syracuse, he loses Robert Anai. This is concerning. He picks up Jason Beck, who was a promoted quarterback coach. Dino's only had one good offense the whole time, and it was with Anai as his offensive coordinator. I don't think this one ends well. I don't think it starts well or ends well this season.
Yeah, I mean Schrader was okay to put it mildly. That was like he was okay for a bit. He was like good for like a month. Then there was some weird things. Like there was one game where he was like the lead rusher and the lead passer, which he's not. It was very weird what happened there. Syracuse just went off the rails there, and I don't know what happened. And I don't like. But here's the thing: if you're Syracuse, I would have loved to go into the transfer portal, get someone else. Like again, like Casey Thompson, Dylan. That would have been a great pickup. But they're like, no, let's just keep this guy, which is concerning.
Yeah.
He's also I think like a super. He's up there in terms of eligibility. I think this is definitely his last year. I think
Yeah.
so. I mean, whatever. I guess if you're Syracuse, you could just stick with the person you have, and I guess don't you have to make a big upgrade. But yeah, no, I'd be concerned about Syracuse. I'd be concerned about Schrader for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. 13th and second to last group. Perfect fit, but for all the wrong reasons, which you'll kind of see what that means. Arkansas State picks up J.T. Shrout from Colorado, who was just horrific last season with the whole Colorado team. For Butch Jones, who's just proving more and more that if he's not picking up a team after Brian Kelly, he's not a good coach. This is a match made in heaven. Bowling Green picks up Connor Bazelak, who was horrible at Missouri, was even worse at Indiana. Now he goes down to Bowling Green to play for Scott Loeffler, who is just a horrible offensive coach. And Georgia Tech, they replaced or part of Jeff Sims with Haynes King, who was part of that whole, you might remember that nuclear meltdown
Texas
analogy
A&M,
I did at Texas A&M. Yeah, he was a vital vital part of that chain. And his offensive coordinator at Georgia Tech is a gentleman named Buster Faulkner, who was an analyst for Georgia last season. Good luck with that, guys.
Yeah, that's not particularly great. I don't think Georgia Tech had a particularly great head coaching search either. So, I mean, Haynes King isn't horrible. He did get injured, so that's probably why that happened. But yeah, I'm not particularly taken with that. Bazelak, that was pretty bad. Missouri down to Indiana down to a MAC school is a pretty embarrassing downgrade. And yeah, again, if you're in the MAC, it just says you're like you're not at the level of a big Power 5 or even a slightly less than Power 5 school. Like it's just like, yeah, this is not good. So
yeah. All right, and the last category is self-explanatory. It is, are you lost? And this is Cade McNamara somehow ending up at Iowa to play for Brian Ferentz. I think his karma might have just broken down and he just enrolled.
yeah, it is very concerning that he was like, I like this offensive plan that involves around running on first and second down and then being like, oh no, it's 3rd and 8. I have to complete a pass. That's concerning. I like Cade McNamara was like, okay, he got unseated at Michigan, I think, because he took too many risks, and they wanted him to take less risks. So that's why they're like, okay, we're gonna go with Kirk Cousins 2.0. So they're like, so basically they benched him, and so I think it's good for him to be on another team. I think he could develop, but I just don't think Iowa is that team specifically. I think, again, Cade McNamara, like any other teams we listed above, much better fits. So many better fits for this guy. Like Nebraska. Why did Nebraska get this guy? Like there are so many other better places that this guy could have landed. Like again, this is a guy who, and again, we didn't mention this. I'm actually kind of surprised you didn't mention this in the whole athletic director thing. When you're on the athletic director tier, where you basically rewrite your offensive coordinator's contract that if he doesn't score a certain number of points in the season, then he's instantly fired. Like I don't even know what level of athletic director that is. Like if you want to write something in so that you don't have to pay extra money if you want to fire a guy, then just fire the guy. Like he can't be worth that. Like, well, we know why you can't fire him because he's the son of the head coach. But like that's insane. Like the thing is, if for some reason you can't fire a person who's clearly underperforming, and because the head coach is saying you can't do this, then you fire the head coach. It doesn't matter if you have one of the best defenses in college football. You say this is not working. We're getting rid. Like that's what an adult in the room is supposed to do. Not be like, well, okay, if you can score like 25 points a game, which is the college football average, if you could get us to an average or above. Because here's the thing. What if their quarterback what if Cade McNamara gets injured for like 3 or 4 games? And like, are they gonna like lower that average? Because then there's gonna be arguments like, well, we would have hit that average had this not happened, or had this game not been. There was like 3 rain games, or there's the snow. Like, there's gonna if they come close to that. Now, of course, if they score 100 points, then yeah, okay, whatever. But the other thing is that this creates 2 perverse incentives. Because one, there's that if it gets closer, like, well, if there had been a rain game. The other incentive, it creates a perverse incentive to basically say you're crushing a team. Say you're going. Like, remember, they crushed Nevada last year. If you're the head coach, if you're his dad, and you're like, we need those points
to score. Yeah.
This is the thing.
We're not going to.
They're going to keep. You're going to keep your starters in against a bad team, and then if you're going to potentially risk injuring them in a blowout just to try to save your son's job. That's a problem. And that's something, again, I can't believe we're going to say this. We might have to bet some Iowa alt spreads. I can't believe I just said those words. But
wow.
we may have to bet, because here's the thing, though, right? Because if you're trying to save your son's job, you're going to keep those starters in the full game. Which is it's insane that we're contemplating this. But, like, that's actually where we are
It's Iowa, though.
Yeah, it's Iowa.
2 responses to that. Number one, it needs to be said that this guy took Michigan, who really had underperformed, he took Michigan to the college football playoff as a starting quarterback, okay? This is not some whatever guy. He wasn't awesome, but, he's not Jeff Sims either. Number 2, kind of along the same line with the Brian Ferentz contract, being a 2023 guy on the leading edge of so many things. Just a little preview of the Big Ten, our Big Ten look-ahead episode. I asked Google Bard why Brian Ferentz was not fired, and I got some great answers. I'm looking forward to that one.
That actually sounds hilarious. I'm actually excited for that now. So, but I'm also excited for this next segment too. I'm excited for this.
Yes.
So, go ahead and explain this segment.
Yeah.